Peter Mathews. He's a professor of political science at Cyprus College, and he joins us now from Los Angeles. Peter, I do want to get to the candidates in a moment, but before we do that, I want to ask you about the process, because I see Nevada was supposed to get a similar app to Iowa that caused the whole debacle there, but that's unsurprisingly been scrapped. So what's the plan here? How are they going to avoid a mess here?
Well, the Nevada caucus is very different. I was there 4 years ago as an observer. It's much more organized, and it's just more supervised, and I think it's much more accurately counted, and it's done immediately, so it should be much better than the Iowa results, and the formatting is much better.
We are seeing early caucuses for the first time, though, this year, right?
Yes, for the first time, Nevada is actually allowing people to caucus today, starting today, actually, the 15th, even though the actual caucus, the formal date is the 22nd, they can actually start today and go out and caucus today, and or vote early in a voting place, which will count as a caucus vote.
So we'll hopefully see some pretty timely results.
Last time I was there, some people couldn't. Pardon me?
We'll hopefully see some pretty timely results then from Nevada.
The counting of the vote. I'm not getting a clear reception. Can you say it again, please? More.
I was just asking you about the timeliness of the results. Obviously, there was some contention about that in Iowa, and you don't expect that to happen this time round in Nevada?
No, not the counting of the votes. It should be just fine in Nevada, as it was 4 years ago, because of the process and procedure. And I believe there won't be this kind of problem like in Iowa. And it's very exciting to see what will happen with these contenders, that the numbers are shifting so quickly. And Bernie has a pretty solid lead over here. And we'll see if he can hang on to it, though. That's the real thing.
Peter, let me ask you about that lead for Bernie Sanders. Why is he so popular, particularly with the Latino voters and young ones at that?
He's done a major outreach toward the Latino voters and the African-American voters, much more than in 2016. And that has paid off, actually. And Latino voters want the issues that he's for, universal, single-payer Medicare for all that appeals to them, because many of them are not insured or fully insured. The same thing with education. Tuition-free education is very good for all working-class people, and many of them are in the working class. So are the African-American people who need to have, as are all the other people, working-class whites. They want to have guaranteed Medicare for all and also tuition-free education. Sanders is offering that, and it seems to me that's really attracting a lot of people.
Peter, I do want to ask you about one candidate who's not actually contesting Nevada, nor the next primary in South Carolina. That's Michael Bloomberg, but he is already making a dent in the national polling. So do you think this is all about his ad spending?
He has made a dent in the national polling. However, in South Carolina, it's 1/3 or so of the primary voters are African-American. And Bloomberg's been under fire for what he has said about African Americans during the stop and frisk policy. When he was mayor, he actually supported it. And that was seen as being a sort of a racist-oriented policy against African American young men, especially. That's put a dent in his climb upward toward the African American community. The African American community wants someone to win against Trump. That's why they initially have supported Bloomberg to some extent. But he's got to show that he's left those policies of racism back behind him. And we'll have to see if he can do that or not.
Well, speaking of the African-American demographic, I mean, it's now essentially do or die for Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren.
It certainly is, and especially Joe Biden. And Warren's numbers have been going down on quite a bit. But when you talk about Joe Biden, that was his major base of support, the African-American community. He has to hold on to them, and yet their main quest was they want someone who can beat Trump, and yet Joe Biden has not won a primary yet or a caucus. And that's putting a dent in his African-American support because they are having doubts about him being able to win. That's a real problem. It's a do or die contest right now for him, yes.
Peter Mathews there, Professor of Political Science at Cyprus College. Thank you for joining us on Al Jazeera, Peter.